Welcome to Higher Ed Live, the live weekly web show all about the world of higher education. We're all about digital development and professional empowerment. I am your host, Seth Odell. Thank you guys very much for joining us for this special episode talking all about progressive mobile strategy. I'm very excited to dive into it, but as first, let me just go ahead and say a quick thank you to our wonderful and generous sponsors. First off, Integral. They're the ones that make this ad-free. We're very, very happy to be ad-free, so thank you to them. Integral are the sponsors of Higher Ed Live. They're also the creators of the Schools app on Facebook, so be sure to check out their webinar series about how they can help you leverage Facebook to increase yield and retention. That happens this Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, and I'm sending a tweet out with that link right now. So get in there and make sure to check that out. Also, big thank you to our sponsors over at Omni Update, the leading web content management system provider, CMS, for higher education. The company's web CMS OU campus is secure and scalable with great tools and features, deployment flexibility, and an awesome user community. In fact, it was the highest ranked CMS in customer satisfaction in 2010 Edu Guru survey. So if you guys need a CMS, you know what to do. Check them out at omniupdate.com. Link coming out to that as well. Thank you guys so much for being here. I really do appreciate it, and I hope you guys are ready for an exciting show. We are here to talk about progressive mobile strategy, and to do that, we have tapped a very, very special man. Let me go right ahead and bring on our guest today. Please, everyone, let us welcome the one and only Dave Olsen, who's web developer at West Virginia University and the man behind Mobile and Higher Ed, pretty much the best and possibly only blog out there in higher ed that covers specifically mobile for higher education. Dave, what's going on, man?
Nothing much.
Welcome to the show, dude. I'm so happy you were able to come back on. As a lot of folks probably know, you've been on the show before, and I'm really excited to dive into progressive mobile strategy. So before we get into the show, you know, we got to do the whole weekly 5, but first, give me a 5 or 10 second plug. Why do people got to tune in right now and make sure they're watching to learn about progressive mobile strategy?
Because it's not the future, it's now. We have to start delivering to everyone on every device.
Love it. Absolutely true. And it's amazing that so many folks aren't quite there yet, and that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to make sure we did this show and had Dave come back on, because, you know, right now the big buzz is obviously, oh, we're going to have an application, or maybe we have, you know, we've redone our homepage with mobile web, but really, you know, there's a lot more to it. That really is stage one, and we need to be so much farther along to do that. And to do that, we have Dave come on the show tonight. We're going to be talking all about that. But first, you know the rules. It's the weekly 5 stories from around the world of higher education that are worth reading, noting, starring, or getting back to at some point this week. These are at least what caught my eye. If you got your own, as always, tweet them out. You know I will absolutely showcase what you guys have to say. First off the bat, just want to give a quick plug. Over at higheredlive.com, we have a video recap from 2011 EduWeb Conference attendees. We're really trying to do this more and more. If we are out at a conference, we are going to make sure to share what everyone's takeaways are for the folks that could not make it. So, guys, if you couldn't check that out yet, please do. And more importantly, if you're going to conferences in the future, feel free to shoot your own response video. We will absolutely run it at higheredlive.com. We really do want to just be able to find a way to better share people's takeaways from conferences, so they're lessons that we can all learn from. Number 2, this is something I really loved seeing this week. It's just a really great example of a campus tour going way beyond campus. It's St. Louis University, and it was just a great campus video that is actually a tour of St. Louis. And I just wanted to highlight this because I think it's such a cool idea that when we talk about campus tours, so often people think about our actual campus. But the truth is, students come for a lot more than that. They come for the experience for where your university is. And I think more institutions need to do exactly what they've done here, which is actually giving you a tour of your surrounding neighborhoods, the kind of things you're going to experience, because students don't just stay on campus. And we need to own that, because let's be honest, our locations can often be a lot of the reason why students want to come. So great example, really cool. Was happy to see that. Third, I just thought this was really interesting. There are 550 American universities that are 100% smoke-free. No smoking anywhere on campus. I just had never realized, honestly, that there were that many schools doing that. I just thought it was really interesting. So I'm not going to stand here and say what should or shouldn't be done, but I thought it was really cool, interesting that campuses are doing that. If your campus is doing anything similar, would be curious to hear all about that. Next up, stats coming in that that Asians and Hispanics dominate online video consumption. When we look at using video, especially in marketing recruitment efforts, it's really interesting to see these new Nielsen numbers that say Asians are averaging 6 hours more per month than whites when they're watching video, and African Americans are most likely to watch video on mobile devices. These are interesting statistics, and the reason I want to mention this is because if your campus is anything like mine has been in the past, diversity is a conversation we have a lot, and how can we reach the right people to have a really diverse experience, a diverse student body. And this is interesting to see that folks are not consuming video online all in the same manner. So as always, guys, you want to arm yourself with as much information as possible. There's some great statistics coming out from Nielsen that I think are worth checking out. And finally this week, we do got one more coming to you, and it is just a U.S. News article. I'm not always huge on these stats and these charts and these top 10 lists that they do, but it was the top 10 schools that have the most alumni giving back percentage. And we have schools that are in the 60s and one in the 70 percentile, that 70% of their living alums donated. That's just crazy to me, but I think it is really interesting that I would love to see someone go a step further and say, how are these institutions getting such a huge give back rate when there's so many that are getting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5% of their living alumni are giving back? Very interesting to see the scope of how different that is. So I will absolutely be on the lookout. Hopefully I can do a recap. Maybe somebody else can. But that's really interesting. So that's the weekly 5. But how about the unsolicited shout out of the week, where we shout out any person, place, thing, or idea because, well, I can. It is my show. And this week, the unsolicited shout out of the week is going to Stanford's Mobile Aware Web Project. And the reason, well, that's because Dave picked it. I asked him for some help. We needed an unsolicited shout out. So Dave, I'm going to put you on the spot, man. Why does this deserve an unsolicited shout out of the week?
Because this is a great example of a university and their mobile strategy and documenting it for everyone to use. And it's not just one app and one website, it's the gamut.
I love it. I love the fact, too, that they're documenting their experiences, that they're kind of talking about what they're going through. That's something that's really important. That's also why we're here tonight. It's, when we got to go into this new territory, I think it's really important that we try our best to share as a community and talk about this stuff. So it's a great lead into today's topic, obviously, which is progressive mobile strategy. Again, guys, please send in your questions or comments. I'm absolutely going to try my best to display your tweets on screen, get as many of your questions answered as possible. Dave promised to stay all night. He said he'd pull an all-nighter if the questions kept coming in, so we're going to try our best to hold him to that. So Dave, as we dive in, I just got to ask the very basic loaded question. Just why mobile web in general? Why is the mobile web something we need to be, why do we need to care about it now at all? And then let's dive into a lot more detail on how to do it and do it right.
Okay, so the first clarification is we're talking about mobile, not a specific platform, mobile web. But the reason is because 1 out of every 2 cell phones sold today is a smartphone. Over half the U.S. population come December of this year is going to have a smartphone. And they're all coming on your campus, and they all want to access information anytime, anywhere. It's the true anytime, anywhere of accessing stuff.
So you've been kind of on the forefront on a lot of what's been going on with mobile. You've been sharing a lot of that stuff with your blog. Can you just give us a little bit of an update in general, again, so we kind of give some context for folks that are watching about what you've done at West Virginia University, the kind of things you're working on, and maybe a little bit of the numbers that you're seeing, so people have that in perspective as we start to really talk about the strategy that you looking at implementing and thinking the rest of the industry should consider as well.
So in August of 2009, so 2 years ago this month, we launched a mobile website based on the MIT platform, which is kind of focused on campus maps and calendars and that kind of normal stuff. At the same time, a student developed an iPhone app, so we launched that too. And we kind of went in autopilot for about a year or so. And during that time, traffic just grew and grew to our mobile website and also to the iPhone app, obviously. And since then, we've implemented a number of things, like for our news site to have mobile templates, our CMS to have mobile templates. We've been doing a lot of responsive web design for a lot of the new websites, including, for example, our Welcome Week website for kids coming on campus this year so they can get the schedule on their mobile device without us having to do a whole lot of work. And in terms of the numbers, in the fall semester of 2009, we were at roughly like 1,500 page views, which isn't amazing for the mobile website, but now we're doing over like 7,000 page views. We've seen a 300% increase in terms of usage of that kind of information. So we've kind of grown organically, and we're starting to try to get our arms around trying to communicate to the rest of campus why they want to do mobile, and that's a lot of what's behind this progressive mobile strategy.
So let's dive right in, and as you bring it up, I mean, what is progressive mobile strategy at its core? And then let's really just try to break this down. So what is it we're talking about when you say progressive mobile strategy?
So the focus that everyone kind of goes towards is this idea of platform, right? So mobile web versus apps versus hybrid or whatever it's going to be. When people have to kind of take a step back and really think about the goals that they're trying to accomplish, audience and then content and then platform. So that's the kind of the strategy aspect of it. And then trying to understand, because we have such a large amount of content and such a diverse constituency, who are we going to target, when, with what, how, all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of making the plan and then sticking to it is the progressive strategy.
Now, why is it? I mean, when a lot of people talk mobile, there is still this kind of idea that there's still this basic argument out there of almost like whether it's app versus mobile web, or if you want to just redo your homepage. I mean, what you're talking about seems obviously like a lot bigger scope. We're talking about approaching the mobile web the same what's mobile web and apps and the whole experience the same way you approach your actual website, which is diving a lot beyond just a homepage or one or two features. Why do you think it is in the industry right now that there's still this conversation that's on a much lower level, talking about like one function applications, or you're redoing just the homepage only? It seems like you're a lot farther ahead when you talk about that kind of a strategy.
Yeah, I'm not sure we're farther ahead, or I'm farther ahead. Well, I guess it's the easy thing is to focus on the small first, right? So that's why everybody gets very focused and very much on the buzzword app. Well, we all need an app. Let's go. Let's make that happen. But from an institutional level, no one kind of realizes the just kind of breadth and scope of the functions that people have. We had our career services people come to us and go, well, we need an app for telling kids about, letting kids look at the jobs that are open, all that kind of stuff. I never even thought of that, but that's the kind of thing that are out there. Your financial stuff. There's just a whole lot to get your arms around. And yeah, you can start small, but at some point you have to realize that mobile is going to affect every single part of your school.
So even if we're starting small, I mean, one of the big questions that would come up, I would assume, is who is your audience? So as you look at the mobile experience, how do you even try to break down who the audience is and maybe what kind of needs they have?
Well, I think the numbers that were in the Google report, and now I can't think of the name of the Google report, showed that a lot of mobile users are your local users trying to find content in the moment. Google tends to break out mobile users into three types: bored, informational, and urgent. And we tend to focus on the urgent user. So how can we answer a question that the person has right this second, which tends to be a lot of the use for our school, at least. We don't have people checking regularly on our news or anything like that. So trying to focus on urgent and what their needs are in the moment.
So can you talk a little bit more, tell me a little bit more about the urgent user? I mean, what are some kind of things that would be urgent that a current student would be needing to look up immediately?
Directory information. So if you want to say, I have to call my professor about an assignment, especially for freshmen on campus, new to campus, the campus map, how to get from building A to building B. That's extremely popular for us. The map has always been an extremely popular mobile bit of content. But something simple like how to change my Wi-Fi password, because I'm here, I'm in a lab, and I want to change it. How do I go about doing it? They obviously can't get on the Wi-Fi network, so they have to do it in different ways. Phone calls. 61% of people make a phone call based on a search on the web. So calling your financial aid office or something along those lines is just as useful and helpful to the user as anything else. And the key thing to remember is that we already have all this content that's out on the web that people expect to be on the web. So they also kind of have a default to go look for that information on their mobile device, knowing it's going to already be there.
So I think that's some really interesting points. I mean, I know that like at UCLA, for instance, we do have the directory, which I've used absolutely before, and that's a great example where I can quickly search for it because you are off on campus and I forget where someone's office is and I'm calling them. So I think urgent needs definitely does seem like a huge portion of this. So I mean, I want to take a step back maybe for a second and say if it's current students as the core, I mean, then how do you look at other alternatives like people alumni or other folks? Where do these other audiences fit in? If you think current would be maybe the majority of what a focus might be on.
Well, it's not just current students. It's also it's just your local constituency. So it's faculty and staff too. So
Mm-hmm.
those are all really important, trying to get your job done today. In terms of alumni, we think about them coming back to school, or how to quickly make a donation or something along those lines. I think part of the problem is I find it difficult to talk about those audiences because I'm not as deeply tied into those bits of content here on campus. And that's where we're starting to try to reach out and figure out, we've dealt with the local constituency. How do we deal with, say, prospects, and bringing mobile into college fairs? That's the kind of thing we're dealing with right now.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Yeah, and then just Mark wrote a question too, saying about prospective students wanting something very different than what typically appears on a mobile site. Yeah, it seems that that's very true. Prospective students could be very different as well. They definitely all have different needs, but I think the local idea is a very interesting one. The folks that are local do have whether you are a faculty or a student, your needs are most likely very similar, and then you could deliver something that works for more people. Let's talk a little bit about content strategy then. What are your thoughts on that? What's the best content delivery? What are you thinking works best for that?
This, I think, comes down to that XKCD cartoon about the university homepage, and I think it's very apropos for this particular topic, which is it's tangible utility versus content delivery. So the things that people actually want to use or can use versus kind of the BS of a dean's message. So we've already kind of talked about directory or providing Wi-Fi passwords or phone numbers. That's the kind of stuff people are looking for. Or addresses even, right, to pop in and go to Google Maps. That's the stuff people want to do to get a task done.
Mm-hmm. And so I do think it's interesting that you look at that. We have, as higher education professionals, so many of us have a real challenge with tangible utility versus, content that on the web. And yet it does seem that mobile is an opportunity for us to approach things a bit differently, and maybe kind of get things a little bit more right and provide things that are really, actually like tangible what our audience needs and wants to use. Is it true? It seems like you get a lot more done with mobile, for instance, maybe versus your traditional site where you still want to have your mission statement on the homepage and things like that.
Yeah, we'll see how it plays out. It's sort of hopeful that we can kind of bury some of the BS stuff a little bit more from a mobile perspective. But a dean wants what a dean wants. So you can only do so much, but hopefully, we can take this notion of mobile first, mm-hmm. Which is a big thing from Luke Rubileski, and I probably just completely butchered his name, Luke W on Twitter. Mm-hmm. And it's a really good way of trying to look at content needs. So you can go, hey, for mobile, we're going to need X, Y, and Z content, and therefore can we design a regular website around that content as well? Mm-hmm. And hopefully you get the buy-in for that.
Yeah, well, it does seem, even Nick Nar's saying is, for him, mobile is a great way to get people to focus on real user priorities. That's always a good thing, yes. To do it no matter what. So I want to dive right into one of the hot topics where I opened up a couple questions that came in early and try to get everyone else's questions answered too. Talk about platform strategy. Application versus site, one over the other, both. Where do you even begin with that? Because it does seem like there's a lot of buzz. There's a lot of vendors out there trying to push app support. How do you even begin to try and tackle something like that?
How to begin? Throw a dart at the board. Sort of. What you have to kind of decide is, are you going to do it in-house, or you're going to have a vendor come in, right? So somebody like a Blackboard, who's going to come in with Mobile Learn, and that's going to be helpful, and that's going to be an app and a mobile website. Do you have time to put into, say, Kurogo as a mobile framework, or the UCLA mobile framework, or Molly project, or any of those projects, which give you a leg up, but they're really mobile web focused? I think I would take a step back and focus probably on responsive web design first, which is this notion of just using the CSS and JS to try to give at least a certain amount of mobile friendliness to it. It's not going to be the best. It's not going to, you're not going to be able to deliver a campus map necessarily that way, but something's better than nothing and get your feet wet in terms of the technology and the issues that you face.
So when you talked about, you gave the example earlier about, alum or career services coming to you saying we really want an application that lets students search jobs. If you're being approached for that stuff on campus, how do you possibly start to tie in, like, okay, maybe we have these applications floating out there that do things, and we want to have, a native mobile site. Like, how do you begin to tie all this together if you're talking about, central for campus? Without having like 18 different little pieces floating around.
Well, first, I think you're going to end up with 18 different little pieces floating around.
Okay.
You already have 18 different little websites. that's the thing, right? Everybody has already kind of gotten this mindset with the web that I'm going to go have my little fiefdom and I'm going to make this thing happen, and it's got my own look and it's got to have my own logo. And if you don't already have that reined in, Mark Greenfield with his governance angle, you're sort of screwed when it comes to mobile web, or not mobile web, but mobile. There's nothing stopping our career services department from going and talking to a vendor, and they got money, they can spend it. Mm-hmm. It's more a matter of, can we pull them under the umbrella and be nice and say, you can do your thing, and that's great. We'll give you advice, but it's just it becomes a governance issue, and how to handle that, I'm not quite positive yet.
So native apps, again, I want to dig a little bit deeper. It does seem like that is the vendor solution out there, right? I mean, I can't go to a conference without being hit with vendors that want to come in and build this, and it's, could be cookie cutter and dropped around. It does seem like there's a lot of push out there for that. When somebody comes to you, do you have that conversation about whether or not this makes sense to be a native app or not? I've seen, I don't say, but I've seen native apps before that I just question, why is this a native app? Is it an app because they think it should be in the App Store, or is it actually because they're using functions on the phone that are obviously better served with the native application?
It's simply that it's sexy and easy to sell, right? It's the bling, so let me get an app. And that's kind of the bullshit way of going about figuring out your mobile strategy. Right. And I hate to say it that way.
Real talk right here with Dave Olsen.
But we try to step back and talk about audience and talk about needs and say, this is, what are you really trying to do? What tasks are you trying to accomplish? And if it comes down to like a marketing thing or people trying to find information, we talk to them about the fact that, links don't open apps. The great Jason Grigsby quote. Basically, if you're sending emails to people about your program or whatever, just make sure that your website is mobile friendly. Every device has a browser. They're still going to be able to find your information even if you don't have an app. Mm-hmm. And so an app is nice, but in order for someone to download an app, they have to be really tied to whatever you're trying to sell. And by that I mean like have an affinity for the brand. And career services, no offense, is not going to have much affinity, right? Mm-hmm. They're part of WVU, but WVU is going to have more affinity than someone else. So we just try to talk about how they really want to use it and what makes sense in terms of actually delivering information that people need.
Now, let's take another step into that, because you had some really interesting numbers that came out that you put on your post with the survey on your blog last week about urgent users and downloading an app or not. And I just want to, it's a really great example of us saying that, obviously there could be an application that works. There's a lot of them that make a lot of sense, but if your application is solving a problem where the person's like not going to think about that problem until it's occurred, then the question is like, are they going to go to the steps of downloading an application, installing it, opening it? Can you talk about that? Because I found that really interesting. That, it makes a lot of sense, but when you spell it out like that, to me, it kind of really hit home that, you have to understand what's the easiest thing a user is going to do when they're having a problem they want to solve.
Exactly, and that's the whole issue, is discovery of finding the app to begin with. Right? You have an app, that's fantastic, but if no one thinks to go grab it before they're out and they're on, a crappy network, then it's of no use, right? So basically what the survey sort of showed was that the more likely someone was into the service, so in this case it was movies, right? Somebody who really liked movies, the more likely they were to take the time and to identify with that interest to get an app when they're at their desktop. But the moment they were actually out and about and trying to do something, and they weren't that quite interested in movies, but they had to find information, they went web. So that's the thing. Like, if you figure most of your people aren't going to be that interested in you to download the app when they're at their desk and think of you and remember that, then go web and give information that you need to give.
That's just a really, really good point. I love it. That folks are likely to use a native application that they already have installed. So one, you have to make sure that they're installing it before they have a desire to use it. And, before they're out there, maybe if they're in the field or out living their lives and trying to use this. I just think it's a really, really interesting point. And the other point I just want to hammer home that's so huge I see with native apps is, if you build it, they won't come unless you tell them about it. I see people put out applications, and if you're putting an application in iTunes and it's for prospective students and you're just hoping they're searching iTunes, I mean, I'll admit I don't have statistics to back this up, but I just don't imagine that a prospective student is typing in every potential school they might like into iTunes. This is something that's going to have to fall back onto traditional marketing to let people know that it's even there. So actually, I'm just curious, just to take that conversation maybe even a step further back, Dave. Talk about discovery at all. I mean, like, how does someone even know what kind of mobile support you have, whether it is, again, a site or an app or anything else? I mean, how do you go about trying to get this in front of the people that are most likely to use it?
I think for us, in terms of mobile web, the first step is to redirect traffic from our homepage. So the most likely place somebody's going to go to on their mobile device to start trying to find information is our homepage. And that's not the most ideal thing, is to essentially hijack them and put them into kind of our idea of what they're looking for, because they could be looking for something that's not on our mobile specific website. That's why you have a link back to the regular web page. But I think that's a good first step in terms of saying, hey, we actually have something for you that you can use, and check us out, and try to remember that you can come back and use this for these needs. Mm-hmm. The other thing is just to have a link on the homepage just 24/7, highlighting that kind of stuff. And it comes down to just hitting over and over and over, not only mobile web, but for apps. Go download, this is going to help you out. And making things, I think the kicker at the end of the day, though, is making products that actually help people, that people want to go tell other people about. If it's the directory and I was able to find the person, I'll go tell my friend, hey, if you ever had this need, either download the app or go to the website. So it's also being useful. It's not just a BS marketing piece, or it's something that somebody can come back to and use over and over.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, I want to open up to a couple questions real quick while we're hanging out talking today, guys. Obviously, please always remember, hashtag #HighRedLive. Anything you guys ever want to know, pretty much put Dave on the spot. I will most likely ask him as best I can. So I'm just curious. A couple questions came in earlier. One is, out of all the open source solutions out there or commercial solutions out there, do you see anything that you think is like best in show at this point for both mobile and desktop support? Whether it's do you see anything out there? What's the best resources, I guess, is really the question that I think came in initially.
Well, I think the original question was about content management systems specifically in general, and I honestly don't know, and that's because we have our own in-house system that we really like, and it's not going anywhere anytime soon. So we haven't taken the opportunity to kind of look to see what's out there. Mm-hmm. Now, in terms of products that you can want to build a mobile website or iPhone apps or that kind of thing that are open source and best of show, definitely the best one is Kurogo, and that's Kurogo. And that's from a company called Moto Labs, and they're the folks that are behind the original MIT mobile framework, which is big a couple of years ago. And those guys they know exactly what they're doing. It's great look, really easy to set up. Seriously, you can have a mobile website set up in about probably 2 weeks, just a matter of getting information together.
Great. No, next question coming in from the one and only Patrick Powers. How often do you reevaluate your mobile site apps site/apps for usability, in such a fast-changing field? And that's a great question, because obviously things are emerging and changing all the time. So how often would you go back and check that out?
We do essentially every 6 months, though I track the stats very, very, very closely, as in pretty much daily, to see where things are going and what's breaking or what's not working. But I try not to get too caught up in new devices, and I do get caught up in new OSs, but not necessarily new devices. You can only do so much. So yeah, just try to look at it about every 6 months, biannually, I guess, in terms of trying to make sure how everything's working. That's not the best, because things are moving way, way faster than that. But at least in my role, I'm doing a lot more than just mobile. So.
Mm-hmm. So that's actually, I'm going to pull back and just add another question then, because obviously in your role, you're doing a lot more than mobile. And where is mobile falling right now, do you see, on an industry level? I mean, this is something that wasn't being addressed previously by web departments. I mean, where is this falling? I mean, who's stepping up and handling mobile for each institution? Is it the same? Is it falling under different folks? I'm just curious, as someone who's not working with it directly, who's doing the work right now?
My impression is it's very much an central IT organization tending to do the work. And by that, your Office of Information Technology is kind of, hammering out or making deals with, say, a Blackboard to get things done, because they're really focused on probably more so the academic side of the house and trying to make sure that stuff's mobile, because that's where the sexy things are at the moment. And that's where Blackboard, SunGuard, I assume Datatel, are all having products out there. And the marketing folks are trying to get into it, but I don't think that it's quite as strong, because they may not necessarily have the same technical people. We're a little unusual, I think.
So when you are approaching this, how do you handle all the different operating systems? I mean, whether it is, again, for a native app or making sure that your site works, how do you actually make sure that it's not only working, but it's working on all the different smartphones that are out there? That seems like a huge loaded question and problem to me.
Well, you have two options. You can either get emulators, which is basically the software versions of the devices, or you try to make deals with coworkers to get actual hardware on your desk. That's the best way to go. We haven't done the best job of that. We've bought some devices, but we're not really in a position to splash the cash. You can spend upwards of $2,000 or $3,000 on devices and to try to make sure everything works well. There is a great resource, which I'll share after the show, which is basically this huge page of various emulators that you can focus on and install on your machine, from BlackBerry to Android, iPhone, the gamut.
Mm-hmm. That still seems really. So, I mean, do you think people are missing out if they're building an iPhone application, for prospective students, but they're not also building an Android application that does the same thing? I mean, that's something that, at least to me, it seems that a lot of institutions that are going the sexy application route are, picking one operating system, and clearly not all your prospective students are going to be on an iPhone.
I think it would behoove folks, to get Android going. I know for our mobile web traffic, Android beats out iPhone. Now, it doesn't beat out iOS. iPod Touch and iPhone still slightly edge out Android, but that just shows you how many people have Android devices, and I think it's almost 40% of our traffic, I think. Mm-hmm. Pretty much all of our traffic is iOS and Android. There's just a really small smidgen that's BlackBerry, or other.
So to shift gears a little bit for another question that came in, this is one that I don't know if you have any information on. I know that I don't. Do you have any idea about accessibility issues with mobile? I mean, how can you, obviously in general with the web, there's always accessibility questions, trying to make sure your site can be experienced by as many people as possible, regardless of disabilities. Where are we with the mobile, whether it's applications or web, with that at all? I mean, have we made any progress as an industry? I mean, is this something that's not even really on the radar yet, or is it?
I can't speak to Android, and I'm not familiar enough with the accessibility options on Android. In iOS, they're very robust, and a very robust browser to take advantage of a lot of your very forward-thinking accessibility options, ARIA and roles and all that kind of stuff. So it's something you should keep in mind, and I know it's something we've sort of failed at, to be honest, with using JQ Touch, which is a JavaScript-heavy library where we kind of we've tried to make changes, and I think we got most of it done, but I don't know how perfect we are. But some jQuery Mobile, I'm not a huge fan of jQuery Mobile, but the one thing they have focused on is accessibility and making sure that stuff all works.
Cool. So another question coming in from Patrick Pryor, just I think a further clarification, which is how many operating systems do you specifically design for? Is there anything beyond Android and iOS specifically in your case?
Well, we do essentially what we call device families. So we have the high-end device family of Android and iOS, making sure everything looks really nice and sexy on that because it has a great browser. To a degree, WebOS sort of fits into that. We haven't focused on WebOS in a while. I have the emulator, but haven't really looked at it. And the second device family is essentially everything else, and that's kind of mean and rude and all that kind of stuff, but it tends to get more of an ugly look and feel. So we tend to split it out into those two and make sure everything works and functions properly on those two device families.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, listen, I want to ask another question. I have an image here I'm about to pop up on screen, and it's from a recent presentation you did where you talked about audience and then content and then platform, and it was your way to essentially funnel them to make sure it lands on the right place. Do you know what I'm talking about? I didn't realize it.
Maybe not. We'll see.
All right, well, it's audiences, on-campus, admits, perspectives, and then finding the right content for them and delivering it via mobile portal native apps. I just wanted to pull this up and show it. I mean, whether we go into it much or not, it's totally fine, but this is just a really great, I think, interesting presentation on your part that kind of shapes the way people think a little bit. I just wanted to make sure people saw this. I think it's really interesting to try and identify realistically what the best platform is for the right content for the right audience.
Yes, and that's the whole. I mean, just summed it up. I mean, that's exactly the whole point of that graphic. Is to that sort of sums up what a progressive mobile strategy is. We've ordered the audiences, then we ordered the content for that particular audience, and then at the end of the day, what platform that's going to be on. That's the whole point of the strategy, and then you can time those out, right, and say we're going to do this one first, and the next one, and the next one.
How does analytics fall into what you're doing as far as tracking numbers and seeing what people are using? You've obviously shared a lot of interesting numbers. How are you using that to make future decisions?
So in terms of, say, the campus map, which we know has this huge surge of use at the beginning of the semester in terms of people trying to find stuff, what we realized is it's very kind of disconnected data. It tells you where a building is, but it doesn't necessarily tell you how to get to a building. And I think more importantly, it doesn't tell you how to get from building to building, because you tend to go from class to class, right? So what we need to do is do a better job of showing that kind of information. And so that's leading to our kind of next iteration of our mobile product, which is going to be much more map focused and much more robust in that area. And also using the map as a discovery tool. If you are out and about, can you find an event that's nearby that you're interested in? That kind of stuff, or how to get to a professor's room. So that's what we're trying to focus on. We're taking that data that shows these huge spikes and making that stuff even better.
Where do you see the growth going? I mean, the numbers that you shared earlier, I mean, it's some pretty serious growth already just in the last, I think it was, 12 to 18 months. I mean, do you have any predictions on how far you think this thing is going to continue to grow? I know, again, Mark Greenfield is watching, has made some bold predictions about, 50% of all, I think it was all higher ed traffic in general, he thinks will be mobile in 5 years. Some interesting things. Where do you see this going? I mean, to me, the numbers that you're seeing really do, to me, call on an allocation of resources to focus on this stuff. And yet there's a lot of institutions that aren't yet. So I'm just curious, folks aren't doing much now. How far behind are they going to find themselves in a year or two?
They're going to find themselves extremely far behind. I think if you're getting to the first 6 months of next year, if you don't have anything for fall of 2012, you're pretty much screwed. Going to be honest. If you don't have a strategy, if you don't have an idea of what you're going to be doing, you're going to be kind of left in the dust. This is the year to make the move, to try to figure out what you're doing and what's going to happen. Otherwise, other institutions are going to start eating your lunch. And honestly, I think it's going to come down to kids are going to start figuring out, I have to make a decision now. What's the best kind of experience where schools keep me involved through mobile all the time, 24/7. That to me is going to be very important.
Very interesting. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it falls back to me too. And when students have a relationship with an institution, they seem a lot more likely they want to experience things and connect with mobile. I was at the Staymates Integrated Marketing Conference a couple of weeks ago, and they had this thing called Teens Talk, where teens talk about their experience with recruitment. And every single student on the panel, there's like 19, said they want no communications as far as texting or anything goes like that, push notification on their phones, anything. With any school that they're thinking about, but as soon as they apply and they're accepted, and it's like that's the school, and they're actually going to go ahead and enroll. They all said, you can go ahead and most likely text. I think 2 girls said don't text me. The rest said text me. They said I'd love an application. I'm open to push notification. There's this stage I think where already these high school students that are coming in are not expecting, but there is an expectation on some level that they're at least open to doing and experiencing these things once they're starting that relationship. So it does seem that with this class that's coming in, now and then a year from now, they're going to be ready. And I think institutions that do this are going to have an opportunity to really connect and have an engagement level. I mean, there's some stats out there. I think, again, Mark Greenfield shared one earlier about the number of times, 150 times a day, I think it is, that some people check their phones. So this is huge potential to connect with people on a different level. So I just think those numbers are pretty interesting.
But that's the kicker about mobile. I mean, we're talking about mobile in this very general sense, like device, and it sounds very kind of sanitary and disconnected. But if you really think about this device, I know I sleep with mine. Mine's right next to me. It's always with me. It's always in my pocket. It's a very personal thing. It's my email. It's all about me, and I've completely customized it. So what we have to do is start building in these. How can we build in personal relationships with people through these devices? And it's not just prospects or admits or current students or alumni. It's also faculty and staff, and how we can make their jobs and their lives easier, and start finding, maybe there's cost benefit there and that kind of stuff to get jobs done faster and better. So
I'm in agreement. I think most folks watching are in agreement. So we're talking progressive mobile strategy. A lot of things are coming. Like you said, if we're not acting now, you're in trouble. But a lot of folks that are acting now still, since a lot of institutions are doing very basic, let's try to just rebuild exactly what our homepage is, or let's go ahead and just do some kind of native application. Give me your big plug. The show's kind of slowly coming to a close. We're slowly inching at that 45-minute mark. I want to know right now, give me the monologue, the one-man Dave sound off on why progressive mobile strategy must be on everyone's agenda, and this must be something that people are talking about.
You put me on the spot. Now I don't know if I can say anything. Just basically, every person's going to have a mobile device, and everyone's going to expect to find the information they want when they want it. And that's why you have to have a strategy. It's going to touch on so many. The thing is, it's going to touch on so many things that if you don't know where you're going and how to make that happen, you're going to be left behind and always kind of chasing at straws or grasping at straws, I guess, and trying to figure that stuff out.
It does seem that we're at a point now, like you said, that it's easy to get lost if you don't know what you're doing. And again, we just keep bringing up a lot of the native apps I've seen that are really nice, even are ones that are from vendors. And I think there's an example. I like that you talked tonight about the fact that you can go down that road and still do the mobile web, and you can keep everything connected, and you can find a way to make it work. But the worst thing you want to do is, I think, that you can just throw some money at this and have one quick out-of-the-box solution and be done. This is definitely not the kind of thing, at least it seems to me, that one project is going to solve. And I think that might be the mindset of some higher-level administrators that, okay, we just need to go ahead and get some kind of app, and then we're done, and now we've done mobile.
No, you have to look at mobile in the same way that we looked at web, and how web has just absolutely blown up, and all the different things that people are doing, and the different groups on a campus that may support that. That's the same thing for mobile. Like you said, one solution's not going to fit it. And you're going to have to start thinking about now long-term in terms of who's going to do it, what money you're going to invest in it, and how do we grow from maybe the one app, we're going to start somewhere, right? From the one app to the rest of it.
So what we got, folks, here, I want to pull this up, and I'm going to ask everybody, use the hashtag if you have one. I want to know what some great examples are, some tangible examples. I'm going to just share mine. Obviously, UCLA, one thing I love is not only on their mobile site, you can actually see where buses are at each bus stop. So you can say, okay, the bus is going to be here in 90 seconds or 5 minutes, and they have GPS locators on every bus. So from your phone, you can know if you missed a bus or not. That, to me, is so useful, so awesome, right in the moment. And it is an example, too, where I'm not sure I would sit and download an application that just did that functionality. I don't need to. I can just go to the mobile site, and it's there. That, to me, is great as one example. But, Dave, what are some that you have? And I want to see if folks watching also have examples of whether it's an application or native, whatever it is, or your mobile, whatever you guys have. I want to hear what some good examples are going on right now.
My two would be Harvard University's mobile website, m.harvard.edu, and the key thing to that is the federated search. So that nice big fat search box at the top of that, which lets you quickly search across multiple resources and find the information you want really quickly. And the second one I think would be the MIT iPhone app and their implementation of a virtual tour, or it's not a virtual tour necessarily. You're supposed to be on campus to use it, but it's one of the best ones that I've seen. So far, I think it goes beyond the whole drop pins style of campus tour apps.
Mm-hmm. Listen, we're hearing from some other folks that it does look like UCLA is obviously not alone. We got BU, University of Florida, both have GPS locators on campus buses as well. So it's a pretty cool example of what a lot of folks in the industry are doing. Guys, send in any more examples that you have. I definitely want to check those out. And then, Dave, my question to you now is common pitfalls. Now, what are some things right now that people need to make sure they avoid? And you tell me yours, and then I'm going to tell you. Well, I'll tell you my thought first because you're the expert. My thought is, it seems a lot of it, especially when people look at applications, they instantly want to break every audience up. We want an application for our alumni. We want an application for our prospective students. And it seems like really, really quickly we want to dump everybody into a different bin and build something totally different for them. I don't know. I just think it doesn't seem like it needs to be that way. And I always hate when I see an institution that has an alumni app but has nothing for anyone else. It just doesn't seem to make sense to me that they would build for one and not for everyone.
Well, I think that's more a case of people who can write checks. An alumni group is a perfect example of somebody who can write a nice big fat check and get something done and not think about it. My pitfalls would be one, kind of trying to go out on your own as a unit rather than trying to involve other units around campus. So I think a great example is the GPS issue in terms of the maps, is to go talk to other people and say, hey, we want to do a mobile site. Do you have content that we can use, services we can access to make things useful for people? And a great example is, can you go talk to, say, a facilities or a transportation group and find that information and work together instead of kind of reinventing the wheel or having a whole separate section of data. And the other pitfall would be, I guess, would be not using APIs. And by that, I mean reinventing the wheel every single time in terms of data stores and how to access those data stores. So for our example, we had a campus map and we had a mobile campus map, two separate databases and two separate bits of data that had to be updated every time. And now we've kind of merged those into one, and we have one single API, and that makes our life a heck of a lot easier. And we can do mashups with other services and other groups on campus. So try to avoid recreating content and try to avoid doing everything yourself, because there's no way to do it.
Love it. Great. I really think those are some really good takeaways. Guys, I want to thank you all for tuning in and watching. There's still some really great examples coming in. You know, we got one final question I want to ask. It's kind of a big one, but you know, how do you get your higher ed institution to even think about going mobile? I mean, my thought would just, this question just came in, my thought would just be stats. At this point, the numbers are here. They do speak for themselves, that I think you can make the argument. But what are your thoughts? If there's an institution that isn't even approaching mobile yet, is about to get left behind, as you said, totally, you know, really lost, I mean, what makes the argument, do you think, to a higher up? Is it statistics? Is it, you know, personal examples? What do you think?
I think stats help, but probably better would be to look at peer institutions, the people you're competing against, and see what they're doing. An easy way, plug for myself, the easy way to do that would be look at the mobile higher ed directory, where you have a list of all the schools that I know of that have a mobile presence right now, and try to look at them and say, hey, look, they're doing something too. We don't want to lose out to them. So, you know, I guess look at ego and try to get people to do stuff that way.
Yeah, pointing to competition works. I'm going to say it absolutely does. You know, if the other guy's doing a good job, bringing that up helps. You know, nothing wrong with that.
And one thing I want to say is you're trying to look at stats like right now and go, oh, hey, we have only 2% or 3% of our homepage traffic is mobile. I hate to tell you, but it's going to be underreporting because for two reasons. One, not every mobile device is going to be reporting on JavaScript to tell you, right? So if you're using Google Analytics, you're probably not going to see everything. And the second thing is if people know that they're not going to get a good experience, they're not going to return. So your numbers are going to skew lower because of that as well. Kind of once you build it, they will come. For us, we're up to, I think, roughly about 10% of the traffic of our homepage is now mobile, going to our mobile website. So it's a lot bigger than most schools have.
Mm-hmm. I love it. I just want to say, you know, Nick Donardis asked a question about where is the directory. I'm pulling up the link right now, so I'm going to tweet that out for folks. But in the meantime, go into more detail about what the directory is that you run over at your blog, Mobile and Higher Ed, because I gotta say, it really is an amazing resource for folks in higher ed. Both the blog and this directory specifically is a great way to sift through and see what's up. So tell a little bit more about the directory while I get that link out there right now, so folks can make sure to star it and save it.
It's a list, I think, of about 250 websites now, or a little bit over, where I go through every few months, and I have a nice little script that looks at common host names for mobile websites, reports back to me, tells me if they're there, and then I go ahead and list them so that people can have good examples of what other schools are doing, what other types of content schools are doing. So you can help try to figure out what you want to do as well. Tied into that was back in February, I did a survey of all those schools at the time that listed out the types of content they were doing, you know, lots of technical things behind the websites, what they were trying to accomplish, and that's also useful for trying to figure out what you want to do, where you want to go.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, listen, Dave, thank you first off so much for coming on tonight and letting everyone that's tuning in talk to you. There we go. I really appreciate it as always. I hope that you can come back on the show again and keep talking about this, because this is something that is going to continue to exponentially grow. It's going to become a bigger and bigger issue, and I want to keep having the dialogue because I think it's really important, and I think it's really important that people have all the information available to make the most strategic decisions possible, because, as we both know, I mean, when the web emerged in higher ed originally, it happened very organically, and we did see as people popping up, people who had the money could do it, and a lot of mistakes were made at some institutions that have led all the way up till now, the fact that we're not structured totally correctly. And I think in some small capacity, in some small way, we have the chance to do things right with mobile. With the hindsight of the way the web emerged in higher ed, we could actually, do mobile right. And I think it's exciting, and I think it involves really being strategic and utilizing the kind of stuff that you talked about tonight. So I want to thank you for coming on the show, and I want to thank everybody for watching. Before I throw it back to Dave for one final closeout, I just want to let you guys know, next week we have a really awesome show here at Higher Ed Live, the EDU Punk's Guide to a DIY Credential with the one and only Anya Kamenetz. I think I pronounced her last name correctly. She's from Fast Company, the author of DIYU. She's coming on. She's also a Huffington Post writer. She's going to come on next week to talk all about her new book. Really exciting stuff. We're happy to have her on the show, so please make sure to tune in next week. And then finally, Dave, one last time, thank you. Thanks for watching. What's your closeout, man? What's your final lesson? What's your last monologue takeaway?
Start playing with mobile now, and just start trying to figure out what goes into it, what it takes. There's a lot of lessons to be learned that are different than regular web, so start playing around with it.
Love it. Well, Dave, thank you again so much. Thank you guys for watching higheredlive.com. We're going to have more and more articles coming out each and every week. We're bringing on more writers. If you want to write for us, let us know. We are indeed expanding. And then finally, I just want to once again thank our sponsors, Integral. They're the ones that make this show ad-free. That's right, ad-free on Ustream, finally. Thanks to them, and also thank Omni Update, the best CMS out there for higher ed. So thanks to both of them. Thanks to Dave. Thanks to you guys. Make sure to tune in next week, and I will see you guys then. So please, take care. I'm packing for a big move, so it's got a lot going on, but I'm still doing the show. So tune in next week. See you guys then. Hope you guys have a great Sunday, and take care.